Hi guys, thanks for joining us for another video. This week I wanted to paint something a little bit different, and the guys over at Tiny Trove Miniatures were kind enough to send us a scaled up version of the Hellgaters Watchmaster designed by Table Hammer. I also wanted to try a different painting technique that I'd seen on a YouTube short, so we're going to get started and go ahead with painting that now. I've already got started by priming this model black, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a mix of Mournfang brown and Abaddon black. That will allow me to get a nice dark brown base coat on here, and that will give us the start before we get on to the next stage. So as you can see, that's the last of the brown going on now, and that gives us a nice brown base coat ready for the gold dry brushing that we're going to be doing next. Like I said, this is a video I've seen on YouTube, and I like the way that it finished and the way that it looked, so I'm going to give that a go. The browns had time to dry now, so we're going to get started with Retributor armour. That's going to be the gold that we're going to use for this, and I'm going to use a small dry brush by Rosemary & Co. These were kindly sent to me a couple of years ago, and they have been absolutely fantastic dry brushes so far. I'm not going to teach you anything new with this. You know how to dry brush, so we're just going to go ahead and get started with this typical dry brushing technique. Get some paint on the dry brushing palette, get as much of it off of the brush as you can, and then with a downward motion put the dry brush the paint onto the brown areas that we've already painted. There is going to be some overspill on here, you're going to get it on some of the other parts, but we'll just come back and go over that later with a different colour. So we're just coming back here and we're just finishing off the lower left leg, so you can get an idea of how the finish will look. So I'm going to go and do this off camera, and we'll jump back once that's finished. So just finishing off the dry brushing on here, and then I'm going to come back in with that same gold and just pick out the edges of the armour. They're not going to be as worn as the rest of it, but we'll pick that out with the same gold as we did before. And then once that's done, we'll come in with Auric armour, and we'll just give it an edge highlight on the topmost sections of those armour panels and that edging that we've done previously. So we'll just pick it out on these sections here that are raised up right at the top, anything that's going to catch the light from above, and we'll do that all over the model. So as you can see, we've just gone and picked out those top edges, and there's just a subtle highlight to those now. Next we're going to look at doing the cloak, and we're going to use a mix of corn red and Abaddon black again. We're going to darken that red down a little bit to get our base layer, and it's just going to be a simple matter of applying that red all over the cloak area, both sides, both the back and the inside between his legs and the back of his armour. Next we're going to be using corn red, and that's just going to be the first layer that we're going to take, and so we're going to leave the darker in the shades, in the folds of the cloak and things, and we're going to use the corn red to start picking out that, and we're going to build up the layers with a combination of corn red, Mephiston red, and then eventually working towards just Mephiston red on its own. So here we are with Mephiston red. We're going to mix that in with the corn red that we've already got on the paint palette, and then get started with adding to those layers and eventually working to a point where we've just got a nice bright red on its own. So now we're going to come in with the last highlight, and this is just the Mephiston red on its own, and we're just going to pick out the very topmost edges of the folds, the edges of the cloak itself, and the lining around his neck where you can see the creases. So there you can see that's another part of this model done. The red highlights, the top coat of those finished. Let's move on to the next stage. So I decided I wanted to do something a little different with the sword on this model, and that is I'm going to do bones. So I'm going to start with a wraithbone layer. I'm going to do 2 coats of wraithbone on his sword and on the crown on his head, and then I'm going to come back in with Skeleton Horde contrast paint to give it shades. Rather than using Agrax Earth shade like I normally would, I found that I get a nice bone colour by using the Skeleton Horde, and then over the top of that I went ahead and dry brushed the wraithbone back over the top just to pick out those top edges again. Not 100% happy with how the sword came out, but the crown I'm really pleased with the finish. It looks like worn bone. So we'll jump to the end and you can see how that finished off. And next up, something a little different from me. Normally when doing flesh tones I would do a wraithbone and then just do a contrast paint of flesh colour over the top of it. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Bugman's Glow as my base, and then I'm going to do a combination of Bugman's Glow and Rakarth Flesh, various mixes to get the skin tones and build up to a lighter layer. Like I said, it's not something I would usually do. I like speed and I like confidence when it comes to painting flesh. So this one's going to be a little bit different for me. I am going to build the colours up layer by layer and hopefully end up with a skin tone that not only I like, but that you guys don't look at and think, oh my god, what's he doing, you shouldn't be painting anything ever. So as you'll see when you get to the end, there were various mixes, there were various ratios of Bugman's Glow to Rakarth Flesh, but eventually I did get a finish that I am happy with. It's not the greatest ever, but it is the first time I've done flesh in this way, so I am happy with how it came out. If anyone has any tips on how to do it better, or can recommend anyone that does know how to do it, or any tutorials that show how to do it in detail. I am limited on my colour palette, so I wasn't sure what to use, but a quick Google suggested that Bugman's Glow and Rakarth Flesh could work together. So if you do think the skin tone's good, give us a like and subscribe, helps the channel grow. In the meantime, we'll get this finished. Let me know what you think about it in the comments, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So next up for me is something that I am even less confident with than skin tones, and that is eyes. On 28mm scale models, I don't even bother painting them. But for this, we're going to put a dot or a line or a little bit of Corax white into the eyes, and then a simple matter of a black dot, Abaddon black dot in the middle of the eyes. This took me far longer than I would like to admit to paint two tiny little eyes, but eventually I got to a point that I was happy enough with that I left it before I made it any worse. Again, like I said with the skin tones, if anyone's got any good tutorial videos, any go-tos that they use for painting eyes, drop them in the comments. I'm happy to give them a watch. I am always trying to improve. As much as I like using contrast paints, normally that's because I run an Imperial Guard army, and it takes a long time to paint a 10-man squad, 100 models, etc. to get them onto the table. So I'd much rather use the speed paints and not bother with the eyes, and get them on that board as quick as I can. Next up, we're going to look at the leather on the belt, and I'm going to create the impression of a leather wrap around the handle as well, the handle of the sword, the hilt. So I'm going to start with Mournfang Brown over these two. It's going to be a quick coat of Mournfang, which I'm then going to follow up with an Agrax Earthshade wash, and then come back in with the Mournfang Brown to create a scratchy look on the top and the bottom of the leather, followed by a little bit of snakebite leather, and then a touch of lightened snakebite, which is a little bit of a mix of wraithbone and snakebite leather to lighten it up a little bit. So we'll just get through that quickly, but that's going to be on both the belt and the handle of the sword. And what you may have noticed while I was painting the leather is that I've actually at some point off camera painted the brass of the sword handle, and that was done while I was waiting for the Agrax Earthshade to dry. I did a coat of Runelord brass. I just wanted to give the handle, the pommel and the I don't know what the other piece is called, but I wanted to give those a coat of brass just to finish it off, to make it look a little bit different in terms of the metal finish to it. So all in all, I'm happy with how this model turned out. I've just got one more thing to do, and that is to add the base that I've already pre-painted. Added tufts, created a nice, simple yet scenic base to finish off the model. So I'm just going to quickly pop the model off here. It is a resin base, so I had to drill it so that the model will go onto it, and then I've super glued it on. So we'll just quickly get that done, and then it's on to the final finished shots. With the finished shots, what we're going to do is there's going to be a little bit of a voiceover that gives the history and a little bit of detail and background on the Watchmaster. I like my narrative, so I've had ChatGPT whip me up a little bit of a backstory for the character. So thanks for watching, give that a listen, and we'll hope to see you again soon.
Forged in the crucible of endless siege, Darian Cale rose through the ranks not by birthright, but by unwavering duty and brutal efficiency. As the Watchmaster of Hellgate Keep, a fortress city perched on the edge of the world, Cale commands the last line between civilization and the horrors that seethe beyond the Black Divide. His armor, gilded but scarred, tells tales of countless battles. Each dent and scrape marks a foe felled, a comrade avenged, a wall held when all else crumbled. His sword, known as Vigil's Edge, is a relic of a forgotten age, passed down through generations of Watchmasters. Enchanted with solemn oaths and quenched in the blood of traitors, it cleaves with unerring purpose. Kyle speaks little. His presence alone steadies wavering hearts and silences dissent. He is discipline incarnate, eyes ever forward, never flinching, never retreating. His men say he hasn't slept in years, that he stands the night watch alone atop the ramparts, watching for the flicker of torchlight or the flick of a shadow that signals another siege. To the realm, he is a myth. To Hellgate, he is law. To the enemy, he is the last face they see before the end.